Ambassador looked at the data pad one more time. The small blue planet ahead should be simple. Every world was simple when you followed the rules. The rules had worked for 50,000 years across the galaxy. Every species learned them. Every species followed them. The Hegemony Council had sent to handle Earth's integration. Integration was always the same. New species got scared when they saw the big ships. They asked questions. They learned about the throne system. They picked their place in the galaxy. Then everyone was happy. Belonged to his people were good at paperwork and rules. They made sure everyone knew their place. The strong species ruled. The weak species served. The smart species helped manage things. It was clean. It was orderly. It worked. But Earth was acting strange. The data showed that humans had been contacted 47 years ago. A trade ship had found them by accident. The humans had been excited to learn about other life in space. They had asked many questions about technology and culture, normal behavior for a new species. Then the humans had done something weird. They had said thank you and gone back to their own business. No one said thank you and walked away. New species were supposed to ask for help. They were supposed to request a patron. They were supposed to build a throne and announce their place in the galactic order. Every species needed a throne. The throne showed everyone where you belonged. The had waited. Maybe humans needed time to understand. Some species took longer than others, but years passed and humans kept doing their own thing. They built new ships. They visited other worlds. They started trading with whoever wanted to trade. This was not how things worked. Had read the reports. Human ships had been seen in 17 different systems. They traded fairly with everyone. They did not ask permission to enter systems. They did not check which species was in charge before talking to locals. They acted like they belonged wherever they went. Even worse, other species liked them. The bug-like had started asking questions. Why did they need permission to mine their own asteroids? Why did they give half their crystals to the void claimers? The humans had shown them new mining tools and asked for nothing in return. The crystal beings called resonance shapers were also acting strange. They had always been quiet and obedient. Now they were asking why they could not choose their own trade partners. They wanted to deal directly with other species instead of going through their assigned patrons. This was all wrong. The system worked because everyone knew their place. Chaos happened when species forgot where they belonged. Activated his communication system. Time to contact Earth officially. The response came quickly, too quickly. Most species took time to gather their leaders when the hegemony called. They prepared formal ceremonies. They wore special clothes. They acted properly nervous. The human who appeared on screen wore a simple blue uniform. She had short dark hair and tired eyes. Behind her could see people working at computers. No throne room. No guards. No ceremony. "Hello," the human said. "I'm Captain Sarah of the United Earth Navy. How can we help you?" Blinked, this was not how first contact worked. Where were the formal greetings? Where was the fear? Where was the respect? "I am ambassador of the Hegemony Council," he said slowly. "I come to discuss Earth's integration into the galactic community." "Oh, that's nice," Captain said. "We've been enjoying meeting everyone. The galaxy is bigger than we thought." "Yes," said. He waited for her to continue properly. She did not continue. She just smiled and waited. "You have not established your throne," he finally said. "Our what?" This was definitely not normal. "Your throne, your place in the galactic order. Every species must declare their position. You must choose a patron species to guide your development." Captain looked confused. "Why would we need a patron? We're doing fine on our own." Felt his head start to hurt. Because that is how the galaxy works. The throne system maintains order and peace. Strong species protect weak species. Wise species guide young species. Everyone has a role. "Sounds complicated," Captain said. "We prefer to handle our own problems." You cannot simply exist without structure, explained. You must submit to proper authority. You must accept your place. You must build your throne and announce your position in the hierarchy. Captain was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. Ambassador, we appreciate the offer, but we're not interested in joining your hierarchy. We tried kings and emperors on Earth. They didn't work out well. We prefer making our own decisions. Stared at her. In 50,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever said no to the throne system. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was chaos. You do not understand, he said. This is not optional. This is how civilization works. Without the throne system, there is only war and confusion. We'll take our chances, Captain said. Is there anything else we can help you with? Ended the communication. He sat in his ship looking at the blue planet. According to every law of galactic society, Earth should not work. They had no throne, no patron, no place in the order. They should be fighting among themselves. They should be weak and scattered. Instead, their cities glowed with peaceful light. Their ships moved with purpose and skill. Their people seemed happy. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This could destroy everything the galaxy had built. Started preparing his report to the Hegemony Council. They needed to know that humanity was not just refusing to follow the rules. They were proving the rules might not be necessary. And that was the most terrifying discovery in the history of galactic civilization. 3 days after his first contact with Earth, returned with proper diplomatic protocols. This time he brought a full ceremony ship. Golden banners flew from the hull. His finest robes waited in the preparation chamber. The integration documents were ready for signing. Every species had signed these documents. Every species had understood their importance. Captain met him at the orbital station above Earth. She wore the same simple uniform as before. No ceremony, no fancy clothes, no signs of the proper respect due to a hegemony ambassador. "Welcome back," she said, leading him through corridors filled with humans working at various tasks. "Would you like some coffee? It's a local drink. Most aliens seem to enjoy it." Declined. He was here for business, not social drinks. They entered a conference room with a simple table and chairs. Through the large windows, Earth turned slowly below them. It looked peaceful, too peaceful for a world without proper authority. "I have come to complete your integration," announced, placing the ceremonial documents on the table. "These papers will establish Earth's official position in the galactic community." Captain picked up the documents and read through them quickly. She frowned. These seemed to be about choosing a master. "Not a master," corrected. "A patron, a guide. The galaxy is dangerous for young species. You need protection and wisdom." From who? The question confused. From the dangers of space, pirates, hostile species, economic exploitation. The great powers provide safety in exchange for loyalty and resources. Captain set down the papers. "Let me make sure I understand this. We give you our resources and obey your rules, and in return, you protect us from other people who want our resources." "It is more complex than that," said, though it sounded less complex when she said it that way. "The system provides order, structure. Everyone knows their role. There is peace." Whose peace? Another strange question. Everyone's peace. The galaxy has been stable for. Captain leaned back in her chair. "Ambassador, can I ask you something? When was the last time your people chose their own leaders?" Blinked. "We do not choose leaders. We are assigned roles based on our abilities and the needs of our patrons." "And who decided your people should be the galaxy's paperwork specialists?" "They assigned us this role 12,000 years ago. We are good at organization and management." "But what if some of your people wanted to be artists, or explorers, or farmers?" "That would be chaos," said immediately. "Everyone has their place. Everyone has their role. Change brings conflict." Captain smiled sadly. Ambassador, I think this is where we have a fundamental disagreement. Humans believe people should be free to choose their own paths. Choice is an illusion, replied, reciting his training. True freedom comes from knowing your place and fulfilling your purpose. Says who? Says the natural order of things. Captain stood and walked to the window. Look at my planet, Ambassador. See those lights? Each one represents millions of humans making their own choices every day. What to eat, where to work, who to love, how to live. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes people make mistakes, but it's theirs. Joined her at the window. Earth did look prosperous, but prosperity without order was impossible. How do you prevent conflict? How do you stop the strong from dominating the weak? We try to build systems that serve everyone, Captain said. We fail a lot. We argue constantly. We change our minds and try new things, but we keep trying because we believe it's worth it. This cannot work on a galactic scale, insisted. Too many species, too many differences. Only hierarchy can manage such complexity. Maybe, Captain admitted, but we'd like to try our way first. Felt panic rising in his chest. Captain, you do not understand the consequences. Without a patron, Earth is defenseless. The Void Claimers or the Iron Dynasty could conquer you easily. Your only protection is joining the system. Actually, Captain said, we've been talking to some of your lesser species. They are interesting people once you get past the language barrier. The resonance shapers make beautiful music. We've been trading with them directly. That is forbidden, said automatically. All trade must go through proper channels. The patron species manage their vassals' external relations. By whose authority? By the authority of the throne system. And who gave the throne system its authority? Stared at her. The question made no sense. The system had always existed. It was natural law. It was how civilization worked. But as he tried to think of an answer, he realized he did not have one. Captain, he said carefully, what you are suggesting would destroy galactic civilization. Without hierarchy, without order, there would be chaos and war. Maybe, she said again, or maybe there would be something better. Gathered his documents. This conversation was going nowhere. Humans were clearly too young and naive to understand the realities of galactic politics. I will return to the Hegemony Council. They will decide how to proceed. Of course, Captain said. You're always welcome here, Ambassador, and if you ever want to try that coffee. As flew away from Earth, he found himself thinking about her questions. When had the last chosen anything for themselves? When had anyone in the galaxy last chosen anything? He pushed the thoughts away. These were dangerous ideas, the kind of ideas that led to rebellion and chaos, the kind of ideas that could destroy everything, the kind of ideas that, despite himself, he could not stop thinking about. His ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's refusal back to the Hegemony Council. Behind him, Earth continued to spin in the darkness, its cities bright with the light of 8 billion individuals making their own choices. And in systems across the galaxy, other species who had heard rumors about the humans began to ask their own dangerous questions about choice, freedom, and whether the galaxy's oldest laws were actually natural law at all. The Hegemony Council chamber buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss the human problem. Stood at the center of the great hall, feeling very small under the weight of so many powerful stares. Supreme Coordinator Eye of the spoke first. Her voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. 47 years. 47 years these humans have ignored our authority. This cannot continue. They are just one small species, offered council member and of the Iron Dynasty. Perhaps we are overreacting. Overreacting. Four eyes blazed with anger. They trade with our vassals directly. They ignore territorial boundaries. They spread ideas about choice and independence. 3 colonies have already asked to renegotiate their tribute agreements. Watched the faces around the chamber. Fear was growing. The great powers had ruled for so long that they had forgotten how to handle actual resistance. "What do you recommend, Supreme Coordinator?" asked the representative from the Void Claimers. "Economic isolation," I declared. "Cut off all trade with human space. Forbid our vassals from dealing with them. Show the galaxy that independence leads to poverty and weakness." The vote was unanimous. Within days, the orders went out across the galaxy. No species under hegemony protection could trade with Earth or its colonies. Human ships were banned from major trade routes. Their diplomatic messages were ignored. The great powers waited for humanity to come crawling back, begging for mercy and a place in the proper order. They waited for 6 months. Instead of collapsing, human trade actually increased. Ships from Earth appeared in the outer rim systems, places the great powers barely paid attention to. The humans traded their technology and ideas with species so low in the hierarchy that they were almost forgotten. Read the reports with growing alarm. Human doctors had cured a plague on the crystalline in exchange for navigation data. Human engineers had helped the floating cities of the Gossamer expand their population in return for their beautiful art. Human teachers had shared their educational methods with the primitive, asking only for their friendship. None of these species mattered to the great powers. They were too small, too weak, too insignificant to worry about. But together, they controlled vast areas of space that the major powers had ignored. The humans were building their own trade network with the galaxy's forgotten children. Worse, the humans kept expanding. New human colonies appeared in empty systems at an alarming rate. When challenged, human captains gave the same response: "We didn't know we needed permission to settle empty space." This was not how the galaxy worked. All space belonged to someone. All worlds were claimed by one great power or another. Empty space was claimed space waiting for development. But human lawyers had studied galactic law and found interesting loopholes. If a system was truly empty and unclaimed for more than 1,000 years, it could be settled by anyone. The great powers had never bothered to formally claim the thousands of barren systems between their territories. The humans bothered. Within 2 years of the trade embargo, humanity controlled more systems than some of the established powers. They did not conquer these systems. They simply moved in, set up colonies, and invited anyone else who wanted to join them. Refugee ships from across the galaxy began appearing at human worlds. Species fleeing poverty, oppression, or simply seeking better opportunities found welcome in human space. The humans asked only that newcomers respect each other and contribute to their communities. They were among the first to establish permanent settlements in human territory. They brought their mining expertise and their beautiful crystal work. In return, humans shared their medical technology and helped establish their first independent government in 3,000 years. The resonance shapers followed soon after. Their music crystals had been controlled by their patrons for. In human space, they could sell their art directly to anyone who appreciated it. Human musicians collaborated with them, creating new forms of music that neither species could have imagined alone. Even some began asking quiet questions, received secret messages from colleagues wondering what it would be like to choose their own assignments, to study what interested them rather than what their superiors demanded. These messages terrified him more than anything else. The pressure campaign reached its climax when the Hegemony Council authorized military action. 3 battle fleets moved toward human space, intending to show the galaxy what happened to species that refused to accept their place. The fleets arrived at the border system of New Geneva expecting to find a small human defense force. Instead, they found something unprecedented in galactic history: a coalition fleet. Human ships flew alongside mining vessels converted to warships. Resonance Shaper energy projectors boosted human shield technology. Crystalline healers supported Gossamer scouts. Tactical specialists coordinated with human commanders. It was not a large fleet. The hegemony forces still outnumbered them. But it was something the great powers had never faced before, people fighting for their choice to be free rather than for conquest or resources. The battle lasted 3 hours. The hegemony fleets, after losing 2 dreadnoughts to coordinated attacks they could not have imagined. The coalition forces celebrated not victory in war, but success in defending their right to exist as they chose. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace communication. For the first time in 50,000 years, the great powers had been defeated by their supposed inferiors. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some species demanded protection from human influence. Others began asking why they needed protection at all. Peaceful protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Workers went on strike. Tribute shipments were delayed or went missing entirely. In the Hegemony Council chamber, Supreme Coordinator I stared at the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Her empire was not collapsing, but it was changing. Species that had been obedient for were asking questions, making demands, acting like they had choices. How did this happen? She demanded of her advisors. The humans never conquered anyone, said quietly. They just showed others that conquest was not necessary. I turned her 4 eyes on him. And what do you suggest we do about it? Looked at the data pad in his hands. It contained a message from a human scientist offering to share their latest medical breakthroughs with anyone who wanted them. No payment required. No political strings attached. Just knowledge shared freely because it might help people. I do not know, admitted. For the first time in my life, I truly do not know. The rebellion started with a simple question. A young worker stood before the monthly tribute ceremony on her and asked, "Why do we give half our crystals to people who never visit our planet?" Elder tried to silence her quickly. Such questions were dangerous. The void claimers had protected the for 2,000 years. Protection required payment. This was natural law. But had been talking to human traders. She had seen their ships filled with goods traded fairly between equals. She had heard stories of colonies in human space where workers kept what they earned. The humans don't demand tribute from their partners, she said to the growing crowd. They trade knowledge for knowledge, work for work. Why can't we? Elder had no answer that satisfied the young workers. For the first time in generations, a tribute shipment left the only half full. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On 17 different worlds, species began asking the same dangerous question. Why? The resonance shapers had always been quiet, creating their music crystals in solitude while their patrons sold the art to wealthy collectors. Now they demanded to meet the people who bought their work. They wanted to know if their music brought joy or sorrow, inspiration or comfort. Their patrons, the elegant celestial court, were horrified. Art was commodity, not communication. But the resonance shapers had learned from humans that creators and audience could connect directly. They stopped accepting the protective oversight that had kept them from developing technology for 3. They had traded agricultural products to humans and received education in return. Now they knew that other species had not always been more advanced. Progress was possible for everyone. Even some began to crack. Received daily reports of his people asking for different assignments, requesting to study forbidden subjects, or simply refusing orders that seemed pointless. The great powers responded with force. The Iron Dynasty sent battle fleets to 3 rebellious systems. The Void Claimers increased tribute demands by 50%. The Celestial Court imprisoned resonance shapers who refused to work. The declared martial law across 12 sectors. But something had changed in the galaxy. Fear was no longer enough to maintain control. When Iron Dynasty ships arrived at the Gossamer, they found human vessels already there. Not warships, but hospital ships and supply transports. The humans had come to help evacuate civilians and provide medical aid to the injured. The Iron Dynasty commander demanded that the humans leave immediately. Captain Torres of the UEN Mercy responded calmly, "We're here at the invitation of the Gossamer people. Are you ordering us to abandon injured civilians?" The Iron Dynasty had rules about civilian populations. Their empire was built on strength, but they took pride in protecting the weak. They could not attack hospital ships without losing their honor. The standoff lasted 2 days before the Iron Dynasty, unwilling to fire on medical vessels. The Gossamer resistance had survived, protected not by weapons but by human willingness to stand between civilians and violence. News of the Iron Dynasty's retreat spread faster than their ships could travel. If the mighty Iron Dynasty could be stopped by unarmed humans and clever tactics, maybe the great powers were not as powerful as they seemed. The cascade accelerated. The crystalline declared independence and invited human agricultural specialists to help them develop food production. The Void Claimers arrived to restore order and found crystal cities protected by energy barriers powered by both crystalline technology and human engineering. The barriers could not stop a determined assault, but attacking would require the Void Claimers to destroy the very crystals they claimed to protect. The economic cost would be greater than the political gain. Another standoff, another retreat. Found himself assigned to investigate these human tactics. The Hegemony Council wanted to understand how such a young species could consistently outmaneuver civilizations with thousands of years of experience. The answer disturbed him more than open warfare would have. Humans were not outmaneuvering anyone. They were simply ignoring the rules that the great powers assumed everyone would follow. When faced with superior force, humans did not fight or flee. They changed the nature of the conflict entirely. They turned military problems into humanitarian crises. They transformed political disputes into economic opportunities. They made conquest so expensive and complicated that it became easier to negotiate. Most importantly, they offered alternatives. Every species that turned away from their patrons found new partners waiting in human space. Not conquerors offering protection, but neighbors offering cooperation. The humans had built something the galaxy had not seen in 50,000 years. A society based on choice rather than force. The final blow came at Crossroads Station, the massive trade hub that connected 17 major space lanes. The station belonged officially to but it was operated by a mixture of species under complex patronage agreements. When the station workers went on strike demanding fair wages and representation, they sent a fleet to restore order. They arrived to find the station protected by the largest coalition force ever assembled in galactic history. Ships from 43 species surrounded Crossroads Station. Not just the usual suspects like the and Resonance Shapers, but species no one had expected to resist. Peaceful traders, loyal vassals, even some members of the patron species themselves. Admiral Sarah, now commanding the human portion of the coalition, broadcast a simple message to the fleet. These people have chosen to govern themselves. We're here to ensure they have that choice. The Supreme Commander was among the oldest military leaders in the galaxy. He had fought in hundreds of campaigns, conquered dozens of worlds, and never faced a force he could not defeat. But this was not a force. It was an idea, and ideas could not be destroyed by superior firepower. The Battle of Crossroads lasted 6 hours. The fleet was larger and better equipped, but the coalition fought with a desperation born of hope rather than fear. They were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for the right to choose their own futures. When the fleet finally, leaving Crossroads Station free and independent, Everyone in the galaxy knew that the old order was truly ending. Watched the battle reports from his ship and felt something he had never experienced before, the desire to choose his own path. For the first time in 12,000 years of history, one of their number began to wonder what his people might become if they were free to find out. The Hegemony Council chamber had never been so full or so divided. Representatives from across the galaxy crowded the ancient hall, some demanding the restoration of order, others calling for change. Military commanders stood beside rebellious vassals. Ancient rulers faced young revolutionaries. At the center of it all, a small human delegation sat calmly at a table that had once been reserved for tribute ceremonies. Supreme Coordinator I raised her forearms for silence. Her voice echoed through the chamber with the authority of 50,000 years of rule. We are here to end this chaos. The human infection has spread far enough. Either Earth submits to proper authority, or we will cleanse this galaxy of their influence entirely. The threat hung in the air like poison. Around the chamber, weapons were checked and alliances measured. Everyone knew this could be the moment when words gave way to galactic war. Doctor stood slowly from the human delegation. She was a small woman with gray hair and gentle eyes, looking completely out of place among the galactic powers gathered around her. She had no army behind her, no weapons at her side, no throne to grant her authority. Supreme Coordinator, she said quietly, may I ask you a question? I's eyes blazed with anger. You will address me properly and submit to judgment. Of course, Doctor said with genuine politeness. Supreme Coordinator I, when did your people last choose their own leaders? The question struck the chamber like a physical blow. Such questions were not asked in these halls. They challenged the very foundation of galactic civilization. Choice is chaos, I replied automatically. Order requires hierarchy. Stability demands that everyone know their place. But who decided your place? Doctor asked. Who gave you the right to rule the galaxy? We conquered it, I declared. Strength grants authority. And who gave strength the right to rule over wisdom, or beauty, or kindness? Around the chamber, representatives began to shift uncomfortably. These were not the usual diplomatic exchanges about territory and tribute. This human was asking questions that had no safe answers. This is pointless philosophy, snarled commander of the Iron Dynasty. Humans refuse to accept reality. We will teach them reality. Doctor turned to him with the same gentle attention. Commander, what would your people choose to do if they were not required to be warriors? We are warriors by nature, replied. We live for battle and honor. All of you, even your artists, your engineers, your children. Opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. In human space, he had seen Iron Dynasty refugees creating art, building cities, raising families in peace. They had not stopped being strong. They had simply found new ways to use their strength. Watched from his position near the wall. For months, he had been studying human society, trying to understand how it functioned without proper authority. The answer had shaken everything he believed about civilization. Humans had not eliminated hierarchy. They had made it voluntary. People chose their leaders and could change them. Workers chose their employers and could leave them. Citizens chose their laws and could change them. It was messy, it was complicated, it was often inefficient. It was also the most successful society in the galaxy. You speak of choice, rumbled the ancient voice of eternal sovereign of the void claimers. But choice leads to conflict. Without clear authority, species fight endlessly for dominance. Do they? Doctor asked. When did humans last fight each other? The question surprised everyone. Galactic intelligence had tracked human conflicts carefully, expecting civil wars and rebellions. Instead, they had found something unprecedented, a species that had learned to disagree without destroying each other. Humans argue constantly, Doctor continued. We have different opinions about everything, but we've learned to compete with words instead of weapons, to change leaders through votes instead of violence. Impossible, declared. Intelligent species cannot coexist as equals. Someone must rule, someone must serve. This is natural law. Says who? Asked a new voice from the crowd. Everyone turned to see stepping forward. His heart pounded as every eye in the chamber focused on him. He was not supposed to speak unless asked. As a bureaucrat, he was not supposed to question policy. As a servant of the system, he was not supposed to think forbidden thoughts. But watching Doctor calmly face down the greatest powers in the galaxy had given him courage he did not know he possessed. I have spent months studying human society, he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. I have seen their colonies, spoken with their people, observed their government. They are not perfect. They make mistakes. They argue and disagree and sometimes make poor choices. He looked around the chamber at faces that had ruled his life since birth. But they are free to make those mistakes, free to learn from them, free to try again. Supreme Coordinator I turned her full attention on him. You forget your place, bureaucrat. No, said quietly, I am choosing my place. The words hung in the chamber's silence. Around the hall, other representatives began to whisper among themselves. If it could question the system, perhaps anyone could. Doctor smiled with genuine warmth. Thank you, Ambassador. You've illustrated our point perfectly. We're not trying to overthrow your system. We're just showing that other systems are possible. Heresy, I declared. The throne system has maintained peace for 50,000 years. Has it? Doctor asked. Or has it simply made rebellion too expensive? How many species have dreamed of freedom but never dared to try? How many individuals have lived their entire lives serving purposes they never chose? She gestured to the assembled representatives. Look around this chamber. How many of you are here because you chose to be? How many represent people who chose them? The silence stretched uncomfortably, as beings who had never questioned their authority realized they had no good answer. We offer a choice, Doctor said. Not conversion to our way, but the freedom to find your own way. Some species may prefer hierarchy. Others may choose democracy. Still others may create entirely new forms of government we haven't imagined yet. Chaos, I whispered. Diversity, Doctor corrected. The galaxy is big enough for many different experiments in civilization. What followed was not a battle or a vote or a formal negotiation. It was something the galaxy had never seen before, a conversation about how billions of beings wanted to live their lives. Some species, terrified by the uncertainty of choice, around their traditional rulers. Others, inspired by the possibility of change, declared independence immediately. Most fell somewhere in between, beginning slow processes of reform and reorganization. The Hegemony Council itself split three ways. They and their closest allies maintained the old system in their core territories. A new federation of equal species formed around human space. A third group created a loose confederation that allowed each member to experiment with different forms of government. Found himself facing a choice he had never imagined possible. He could return to his people and his assigned role, serving the same system he had always served. Or he could request asylum with the human delegation and discover what his species might become without the weight of hierarchy pressing down on them. The choice was terrifying. It was also exhilarating. 6 months later, stood in a small office on a human space station, sorting through applications from who wanted to study in human universities. Not because they were assigned to, but because they were curious about subjects their own society had never allowed them to explore. Through his window, he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going freely. No tribute ceremonies, no formal protocols, no thrones declaring who belonged above whom. Just people making choices and living with the consequences. It was messy, it was complicated, it was often inefficient. It was also the most beautiful thing had ever seen. Earth's throne remained empty because humanity had never needed one. They had discovered something the galaxy had forgotten over 50,000 years of rule. The greatest power was not the authority to command others, but the freedom to choose your own path and help others find theirs. And in the vast darkness between the stars, that freedom was spreading like light.